Hey guys, today I would like to talk to you about sketching trees. Trees can be in our sketches in sort of many different forms really, but the sort of three main kind of ways they come up, I suppose, is that you may have trees in the background of a sketch, just to create a bit of atmosphere and fill out the scene and stuff. Or secondly, trees might actually be one of the key elements. So you might have a building, but also the trees may play like an equal kind of part of the scene. Or thirdly, you may actually just be sketching a tree kind of as the sole focus of your sketch. But either way, I think it's important to sort of be able to practice sketching trees in sort of a different kind of ways, So you might want to practice sketching trees in like more of a realistic way. For example, SIDAWAY does a lot of sketching trees as like his sole focus, and he does this sort of in his watercolor paintings, but also in like fine liners as well. So he's got an amazing blog. I'll put the link in the description below, where he was trying to sketch a tree in every postcode in London. And he just carry around like a really small sketchbook and just draw in fine liner. And some of those sketches are just so cool. They're really, really good. And he uses hatching in different directions and stuff to kind of indicate some texture. It's like really worth checking out. So I'll put the link in the description to that, to his blog. But he also has amazing watercolor paintings as well, where trees are like kind of his sole focus. And I've always sort of found trees quite difficult, really, especially to make like the sole focus of a picture. But yeah, his stuff is really inspiring, so definitely check that out. So the kind of the way that I sort of always think of trees really is like in a more sort of stylized way, really. So there are a few different urban sketchers that I kind of really like their style of sketching trees. One is SANTI. He's like a Spanish urban sketcher, and he's actually got a book out actually, which is about sort of illustrating nature and stuff like that. So again, I'll put the link to that book in the description below. Unfortunately, it's only available in Spanish at the moment, but if you can kind of read a bit of Spanish, or even if you can't, I think it's still an amazing book to kind of at least flip through, so you can go and check it out on Amazon. And then another urban sketcher who I absolutely adore is Danny Hawk. So he lives over in Germany. I think he's originally from the US, or maybe he's half American, half German, I don't know. But he has got like quite a cartoony style of urban sketching illustration style. And I really don't mean that in a derogatory way, because I feel like my style is kind of quite cartoony, but I know people always think, oh, cartoony, but I don't really know how else to kind of put it, but it has got that kind of like an almost animated feel to it or something. I don't know. It's kind of quite difficult to give it a word. I've actually done a lot of searching around the internet to see if there's kind of some terms for this illustration style, and I can't really find any information. But anyway, he's quite graphic and stylized, and he sort of sketches trees like quite cleanly, I would say is the word. But he actually has a video here on YouTube on how he does that, and it's like really worth a look at, because it's really simple yet effective kind of technique that he has. So again, I'll put the link to that in the description below. And then kind of another way that I see trees sketched is by architectural illustrators, or people that used to be architects, so they kind of lend that kind of style to their sketching of trees. So when I'm thinking of this, I'm kind of thinking of people like James Richards. If you don't know who he is, definitely check his stuff out on Instagram. I think he's at JR Sketchbook, and he has, I think, 3 courses on Skillshare now about urban sketching, and all 3 of them are just incredible. Really, really good. He's an excellent teacher. That's what he does. He I think he used to travel around the world and sort of do like architectural kind of town planning sketches or something like that. But he leads a lot of workshops these days, and I think he is like a professional teacher. So I'd highly recommend checking out his Skillshare courses. If you want 2 months free of premium membership to Skillshare, which means you can just watch as many courses as you can possibly cram in 2 months for absolutely no money at all, then again, do check out my affiliate link in the description below. You get 2 months for free. It doesn't cost you anything, and I think I get a couple of quid just as a thank you for referring people, so it's kind of a win-win. And then the other urban sketcher who has an architectural background is Liz Steele, and she's actually got quite a lot of information on her own blog about sketching trees and stuff like that, so that's definitely worth checking out. I think her blog address is lizsteele.com, but again, I'll stick it in the description below. Or I'll stick a link to the exact article on sketching trees because it's quite interesting. And then another sort of way that I see trees sketched, I suppose, or painted is like this really kind of loose watercolor way, which I absolutely love as well. So I kind of lean towards sort of a line and wash technique, really. So at the moment, I'm sketching this acacia tree, which is like endemic to Africa, and I, keeping it quite loose with my fountain pen there, and keeping it a bit scribbly, I suppose would be the word. And then I like to go in with a bit of watercolor and sort of add the next bits. But I really like kind of the technique of just going straight in with watercolor as well. So you'll see here, I'm going to sketch 3 different trees, and I'm going to do them in 3 different ways, just to give you an idea of, the ways in which you can approach this. So here I'm just using a number 10 brush, an Skoda brush, travel brush, and I'm using my St. Petersburg White Nights watercolor set. I'm probably a bit rusty on mixing different greens, but there I'm just using Indian yellow, and I'm going to mix it with what's called that blue there, which is called bright blue in this set, which kind of gives quite a nice like bright green. So I do have a green in my palette there, which is simply just called green, but obviously I'm just trying to avoid using that and actually using different mixtures of yellows and blues to create the green, to just make the picture, the painting, like more interesting. And then here I'm just adding a little more blue to the mix, just to make it a bit darker. Something that I've kind of seen a lot in terms of painting in watercolor is just to always try and vary your tone, like your color a bit, so like alter the mix a bit. So here I'm just I'm adding a bit more blue occasionally, or I'll go back the other way and add a bit more yellow, just to kind of vary the color a bit so that it's not all one flat color. And I'm just trying to leave certain areas in the tree there unpainted to let the branches kind of come through, or let some light come through, so it's not all one solid block of green. So now I'm just grabbing a sepia. I've changed to a slightly smaller brush. I think it's size 6. A Skoda brush, and I'm just going to use that sepia just to kind of paint in some of the branches. Now I'm just grabbing a bit more bright blue to add it to that green mix. I'm probably just going to grab a bit more yellow as well, just to kind of make it a bit greener again, because it looked a bit blue there. Just trying to make it a darker colour, basically a darker green, because I'm going to go in and just paint the next layer on the kind of leaves to give a bit of shade. I'm just using a bit of Indian gold there as well, so I think that it was just coming out a bit too, like the wrong shade of green. So I'm just painting around the edges, just anywhere where I think the shade should be, or looking at my reference, you know, where I can see that there's shade. So now I've just mixed like a darker shade of sepia just to go in and like paint some of the shadows or the darker bits on the tree trunk, just to give it a bit of depth. It just kind of makes it pop a bit more. And I think that's the key really, is just keep going back in and just making certain bits darker just to give it the right contrast and make it look, you know, really dynamic. So for this sketch of the baobab tree, I decided to use this Derwent Inktense watercolour pencil. It's just kind of like in a brown colour. I didn't really sort of think about how I was going to do these trees too much before I started this video, but I don't know, I just kind of picked up whatever I had around that kind of seemed like it would do the job, you know. So I thought, instead of drawing this one out in pencil like I did the last one, I'll draw it out in this kind of watercolour brown pencil. So yeah, I'm just kind of getting the shape of the tree here and how the branches kind of curl around. It's quite a sort of complicated tree at the top. There's like a lot of little branches and stuff, but I'm just trying to get the basics with the pencil. Unfortunately, I started painting and realised my camera wasn't on. It happens to us all. So I had painted a bit of this already. To kind of get that browny grey colour I've got there, I actually mixed together, it was a Indian gold and purple. So because they're complementary colours across the colour wheel, they kind of give this nice kind of neutral kind of browny grey colour, and I felt like in the reference photo I could kind of see a bit of orange and a bit of purple in the shades there, so that's why I decided to mix those two colours together, and I think it kind of came out alright. I'm using quite a big brush here, just trying to use the point to suggest the branches. In hindsight, maybe I should have used a slightly smaller brush, but I was trying to be super light and just paint with a point here. I finally kind of realised that I was using far too big a brush and I wasn't going to kind of get too much further with that, so I went to the complete opposite other end of the spectrum and picked up my rigger brush, which is quite a new purchase actually. I only got it a couple of months ago and I haven't used it a great deal, but I have used it here and there and it has come in really, really handy. I'd been thinking about buying one of these for so many years and I just always forget. Every time I was in an art store I just always forget to get one, so finally kind of remembered, and yeah, really love it. Now I've switched over to a different brush, just trying to show you lots of different sort of things, techniques and brushes here. That was just a Rosemary & Co dagger brush that I used just to kind of get those sharp blades of grass. And now I'm just going back in and just sort of doing some darker bits of grass again, just to give it a bit of contrast. then finally I'm coming to a tree which I think is quite common in South Africa, maybe particularly around the Pretoria kind of area, so I read. And I really don't know how to say this tree name. Royal POINCIANA tree? I don't know, I'll put it up on the screen here. And it's just got this beautiful bright red blossoms on it. I think it's also known as the flamboyant tree. So here again I'm using a watercolour pencil, and I thought I'd outline the areas where the red blossoms were with this red watercolour pencil, and then go in with a sort of darker brown one to indicate where the branches are, and then use a green one just to indicate where the green bits of the tree are. I've never ever tried this technique before, but I thought it might give me a good indication when I go straight in with the paint as to where, you know, where I should be placing each colour and stuff. So I thought I'd give it a go. And again, I probably could have gone a bit longer on this tree, just building up the layers, but I think it gives you a good idea of like how you could approach sketching a tree if you want to use this method. So as for my tips on how to sketch better trees, tip 1 would be to kind of decide on what style you're going for, like know, you know, from the start which way you want to go with your sketch. Do you want to do like a realistic thing, or do you want to do a bit more of a stylized tree, or maybe you want to do like a really loose kind of painting. So you know that always kind of helps if you have like a direction that you know you want to go in. Maybe you already have your style quite established and you want to do it in your style. I particularly enjoy like the line and wash kind of technique, so like the very first tree that I did, so that's kind of like my favourite way, because I really like getting in there with a fountain pen and getting a bit scribbly and stuff. Tip number 2 would be to make sure you kind of get the overall shape and volume of the tree first. So obviously you can do this lightly in pencil like I did with the first one, or if you want to go straight in with ink, or whatever you want to do. I don't think I quite got the correct shape on that acacia tree, the first tree that I sketched, but do you know what, you can still like tell what tree it is, so you know that's fine. Tip number 3 would be to focus on the proportion of the tree and the surrounding foliage. So obviously if you're adding trees to your sketch, making sure that they're kind of the right height in relation to maybe a building or whatever it is, whatever other objects are like in your sketch. Tip number 4 would be to make sure you know where your light source is coming from, so where the sun is shining, so that you can understand where the highlights and where the shadows will be on the tree. So this all just comes from observation really, either if you're sketching on location or if you're just doing it from a photograph. Tip number 5 would be to make sure that you leave some gaps just for some light to shine through, and also just for some branches to come through as well, because obviously not every tree is like a mass of leaves on the top and then a trunk on the bottom. You know, you need to be able to see some branches breaking through as well as some light. You know, they're not solid objects. So yeah, so that would be tip number 5. Tip number 6 would be to practice sketching trees with reference photos, just like I've done here. Learning some of the different types of trees in your area is always a good place to start, because obviously you're probably most likely to be urban sketching around your own area, and that's why in this video I thought I'd focus on some African trees, seeing as that's where I am right now. And then, you know, you can try sketching them in all different types of styles and different types of mediums. You could even have a whole sketchbook just dedicated to trees and your different explorations of them. Which leads me on to tip number 7, which is to, you know, create some different studies. And, you know, that's exactly what a sketchbook is for, to sort of, do studies of things before you'd move on to go and do like a bigger painting and stuff. So that would be number 7. Number 8 is to learn how to mix different shades of greens. So don't just use a green straight from the pan or straight from the tube. It's much more interesting if you mix your greens and you vary the tones as you paint. Tip number 9 would be to experiment painting trees and leaves and things with old paintbrushes if you've got some around, because you can get some really cool effects, or even just try using like a toothbrush or anything, you know, a sponge. There are quite a lot of YouTube videos sort of like with people demonstrating this kind of technique. So yeah, grab whatever you've got around and try making marks with them, making textures and stuff. And then tip number 10, which I think I accidentally covered a bit earlier anyway, was to keep a dedicated sketchbook to capturing trees and foliage. So you could check out Ian SIDAWAY's blog, for example, where he uses a small sketchbook and he sketches trees in fine liner, or, you know, get a larger watercolour book and do loose watercolour paintings, whatever you prefer, but documenting trees and foliage, and like you could put some little notes around like the name of the tree and where you found it and all that kind of thing. I think it would be a really nice project, and it would also make your sketching and especially your sketching of trees like so much better. I hope you enjoyed this video, guys, on sketching trees and my top 10 tips on how to improve, or how to sort of think about sketching trees in different ways, and how you can practice to make better sketches. I have a full blog post on this very subject on my website, on my blog, called urbansketchingworld.com. So please definitely go over there and check that out. And you can find my personal sketches over on Instagram at lookingout2c with an underscore at the end there. And I also have a book out. If you haven't seen any of my other videos where I go on about this, I have a book for sale, which is kind of my travel sketches of over the last 3 years. There's over 130 original ink and watercolour illustrations involved in that. It's actually available as an ebook, so you can check out the link below and you can just go and get it and download it instantly and have a look through. So 60 pages, 15 countries, 4 continents, and well worth checking out if you're into travel sketching, ink and watercolour, line and wash, or urban sketching, or just armchair travel really. So don't forget to check out my other videos. I've got loads of videos, sort of tutorials, time-lapse sketches, that kind of thing. Please do give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel. And there's some more suggested videos at the end of this video. I will see you in the next one. Cheers, guys.